you know, if something's a little too good to be true, it may be, you know, better off to kind of assume so. So I was a freaking, I don't know how many gallons I consumed over the course of my few dieting phases of a Carb Master chocolate milk. But I swear, every time I started to drink it, it took me a little while to kind of realize, but if I really had like a couple of cups in a day, and like this is supposed to be like a macro friendly ass treat, you know, because it had 8 grams of protein, 5 of carbs, 2 of fats, like in a cup, and that's pretty decent. A regular thing of chocolate milk is like double, maybe even triple that calorie, definitely almost quadruple that fat value. But as soon as I start drinking a ton of it, I could tell that my sort of progression of weight loss was beginning to slow, you know. So I think that was probably the most blatant example of either just lying or exaggeration of the calorie values. But yeah, if you're trying to peel down, anytime you see like a calorie smart version of something, that might be your ticket, right? Swap a Coke with a Coke Zero. Swap I can't think of another swap, but you get the gist. All right, I've got some a little bit of a tip for you, a little bit of a courtesy kind of thing. You know, have a firm handshake, speak clearly, make eye contact, sort of thing. We're always very concerned about our first impression, right? It's like, oh man, you know, you're about to walk into a room, there's somebody there you've never met, you're about to, you know, meet somebody, do some kind of interview, do some kind of whatever. You know, it's always about how you come in, right? Very seldom do we hear anything about a last impression, right? Anything about the, you know, just the vibe you give off when you leave a space, right? When you leave a group, when you leave the restaurant, when you leave anywhere, you want to have a lasting impression, you know? So if somebody walks off and let's say, you know, they've been hitting chest, they've been hitting arms, so they've got a bit of they've got some mass on the front side, and then you see him, it's like, all right, man, I'm out of here, you know, dap, whatever, he rolls off. Little slender from the back, you know, and I don't want people thinking like that, you know. I don't want to leave a group and then have it be, where'd Sam go? And as soon as I turn around, as though it's like an optical illusion of, you know, just disappearing into nothingness, right? So that's one benefit of having a reasonably developed back, is you're going to be recognizable from all angles to a certain degree. I wouldn't say it's overboard to start thinking about the lift that's going to happen the next day if it's substantial enough that it demands that prep. You know, I would not want to walk up to I used to be more of a morning lift hater. Like in my mind, it was like I got to eat 5 meals, or I got to eat, you know, X thousand calories and carbs, and then work out later at night once it's all digested, which I do think is obviously the best approach. But if I've got to do a morning lift, let's say I'm busy that day, or I got to travel or whatever, I don't mind it. It's fine now. It doesn't bother me as much because I can still get into it. It just takes a little longer to warm up because obviously I've been sitting down in bed all night. I got to get everything moving. But with legs, there's something where you're really loading up. I mean, if I'm doing heavy leg press, even just moderate leg press, it's still pretty demanding. If your prep's not there, you know, as in the zone as you can be, your performance it's going to suffer, you know? How many world records were broken by a guy who got 3 hours of sleep and was dehydrated? Now, of course, there might be a few where it's like a hero story because the guy was sick and he overcame it or something. But for the most part, very low. Very low. Do you think the night before the Olympics or whichever, because I mean, it can't all be on one day for swimming. It's got to be like a multi-day sort of thing. But I would imagine, you know, someone like a Phelps is he's going to bed early the night before. He's got something to do. At least, you know, some of those guys end up doing extra partying. That's kind of their thing. But for the most part, anything cool that takes a lot of physical effort and exertion like that you want to do well, it's you know, get ready for it, right? Make sure you're hydrated, make sure you sleep good. If you know your knee is a little funky, maybe don't do anything to mess it up the day before. You know, there's just a lot of angles to look at, and the things that really affect your in the gym performance, they're not flashy. It's not a freaking montage of somebody working on a car, and they're putting on, they're throwing the turbo into it, and they're latching on the exhaust. It's like, no, man, all that cool shit, the shit that you get to show off, like, posing down and looking at your pump, that's the cool part. And then the rest of it is just, regular ass prep. It's I've said this a couple times already. I'd lean towards at least 80%, 90% of anybody who's doing something pretty cool, where it's like just interesting to look at, everybody hears about it, just whatever. There's probably, for the amount of time that he's doing that thing that people are watching and enjoying or whatever, there's got to be at least a few hundred times the amount of time spent just practicing, working on something, stretching out, just prepping. The ratio of cool shit to grinding, aka just working on something, getting it ready, working on yourself, fitness-wise, skill-wise, it's a crazy ratio. So that's where I think you got to be okay with that, and not get discouraged by the fact that you might be looking up to guys who are doing all the cool shit. And of course, social media-wise, everybody's posting the cool shit, right? That's what we want to see. We want to skip straight to there, right? So if you took a guy who was crazy dehydrated, I'm talking like, Castaway style, he's not going to be able to get a pump, nor would he feel like he has the energy to get a good lift, just because things aren't running right. The ideal lifter, you're looking at if you had one of those like Dragon Ball scanners, or if every time you went to the gym, the guy at the check-in desk had one and he was looking at you, and it's like, okay, is this guy ready for a good lift or not? Right? That scanner wouldn't read power level, it would read hydration, level of rest, overall just kind of stress and fatigueness, and that would play into the rest, of course. But if you had a whole day of like traveling and you were lugging around luggage and you didn't eat enough food and you were dehydrated, that would kind of crash your stress levels, or I guess kind of spike them, and it would just be looking at at least in the main component, like how fueled is this guy, how rested is he, how hydrated is he. And honestly, even just looking at these three factors, that would decide pretty consistently, like, okay, this guy's ready to hit it, or if this guy's got to work on his prep. It's like anything. I couldn't tell you the exact ratio, but when it comes to prep versus performance, the prep is like 80% of it minimum. So obviously when you come into the gym, you got to bring it. You have to have a certain it's not like it's a life or death thing every time, of course. Like some days may feel a little more casual, but at least during your working sets, like the only thing that should stop you from going harder is the fact that you just physically can't continue to move. It shouldn't be because you gave up, or you didn't really feel like it, or just whatever. Like you should be trying to push yourself as hard as you can in the moment of each of these sets. But if you want to be able to do that consistently, then it means you gotta get a reasonable amount of sleep. Don't stay up playing 3 hours of Marvel Rivals or League of Legends, or whatever else. It's cutting into your sleep time. And I understand the allure. I've clocked a good amount of hours myself in a variety of. My thing was Warzone and Counter-Strike. I think, it was like early high school I was playing some Counter-Strike. I think I had like 1,000 hours clocked. Very casual, like I'm not sitting here grinding or anything. And a ton of Warzone. I never got my Warzone stats exactly, but I was getting good. It was, I'm talking like Verdansk, like peak Warzone. Now it's kind of rough, but it used to be where I could just, if I didn't get a solo win, like it'd be weird. Like that'd be an off day. If the first or the second game wasn't, I don't know what was going on. I was just perfectly locked in. But if that's cutting into your sleep, I know it kind of sucks, but you kind of have to have like a your mom's voice in your head to tell you, like, all right, you gotta go to sleep, man. You gotta turn this thing off. I think it would definitely help if you can get your room pitch black. That's something I'm doing now, where there's basically no lights at all, like no side lights, there's no computer in my room, so it's not like constantly on with like a little blink. Like it's like even with the shades up, it's still pretty dark, but with the shades down too, like it's black, right? It is completely dark, and it just kind of puts you in a better state. I'm sure I could take it a few steps further and like put some blue light glasses on, and make sure I don't play with my phone like an hour before bed, or anything like that. I'm not that crazy about it, but I'm sure I'll probably up my sleep intensity just to make sure my recovery is on point. But that's, what I'm getting at is it's a lot of angles at play that are going to seriously affect how you do. If you didn't study enough for a test and you did not sleep the night before, you're not going to do well. And I mean, what is a working set if not a test of how hard you can go? So if you didn't prep yourself, then you're really screwed. And you're like just toiling away in this state of like under-recovered, low-prepped lift, which is then playing into more under-recovery. And then the odds that you're going to make continual or any good progress, very slim, very slim. I'm talking probably Powerball levels. Now, some guys get away with it, right? There are characters where they lift very casually. They've just got a certain genetic disposition, or they, like maybe their appetite is just really low. This is one thing that'll change from person to person, which is kind of just a luck of the draw thing. But there's guys where you see them walking around and they're just diced all the time. Like might work out a little, or like just play basketball or something, but the guy is peeled like veins at the wazoo, and it's just because the guy doesn't have a huge appetite. He's just not that hungry, So that's a subjective angle, right? When guys say, "Oh, I have a fast metabolism, I can't eat," I think it's more accurate to say you just don't have a huge appetite, which it's not bad. It's not a bad thing. It's just I think that's the objective answer. So for him, he's got a bit more trouble getting food in, and for the other guy, where it's like, "Oh, I got a slow metabolism, bro. I just I just can't burn through it." It's like, no, that guy just has a high appetite. So you're just eating more food than that threshold of maintenance. But I guess all I'm really trying to get at is there's a lot to the outside of the gym portion of being a lifter, which has massive impacts on in the gym performance, right? So if you really care about that in the gym performance part enough where it's starting to take precedent, where you actually want to walk the walk outside of the gym as well, then you got to do it, man. Right? I'd say you almost owe it to yourself if you want those gains, because that's how you're going to get them. So calorie tracking, just start small, get a food scale in the kitchen, and before you know it, just out of curiosity, you're going to end up like, okay, just wonder how many calories is in this, and then, well, let's just say the wheel will be rolling, and it'll kind of be a self-fulfilled kind of continuation of really getting into it. But that's for someone who hasn't dived in all the way to find out, right? Because it's like you can't force somebody to do something to a point. You can tell. Let's say somebody who you want to work out, and you always tell them you want them to come with them, or you want to join the gym group or whatever. It can't be forced, right? The guy kind of has to want it, because it's as much as there is a community aspect to it, the gym is very just kind of individual and personal, right? It's your thing. No one's life gets off, it gets thrown off kilter because you didn't go hit chest one day when no one knew you were going to do it, right? So it's kind of the for you by you situation. I'm not necessarily doing every set thinking, all right, I'm excited to hit this set, let's get after it. It's almost a thought process more akin to like, oh shit, all right. If somebody's trying to peer pressure you into something and you're just, okay, come on. So leg extensions as a pre-exhaust, moderate weight. I'm not talking about anything crazy here. Just 100 pounds. Double leg, squeeze it, hold it at the top. That's just for, a preemptive burn and, pre-exhaust. Nothing so crazy, but enough that it's going to hinder my ability to do those 9 plates on the leg press. I would have gone for 10, but there's only 9 on each side, and I didn't want to walk all the way around. Maybe that's my laziness coming into play. But either way, this is a good combo. And I made I had a whole talk about this a few days ago. I think it was with chest, or actually it might have been on a leg day. I don't really remember for sure. But I think there's definitely something to doing a superset. So I'm talking the same muscle group instantly after the other. So 2 movements combined as one kind of double set, where the styles of each movement differ drastically, right? I don't understand, or I don't think we'd see the appeal of doing leg press instantly supersetted with that other leg press. I mean, it's got a different strength curve, but it's the same motion,
right? I'm not going to superset dumbbell bench to barbell bench. If anything, I'll just do a drop set and do dumbbell bench again with lighter weight. But what I would do is pressing immediately into flies, or pullovers immediately into rows, or pull downs immediately into rows, or sometimes leg curls immediately into lighter RDLs. So that's the plan here. Leg extensions immediately to leg press. And the biggest difference of these two, which I think makes them play together rather well, is there's not a crazy stretch on light leg extensions, but there is a really nuts squeeze and burn at the top. This straight leg position, that's the resting position of the leg press. So it's almost adding a certain, just different angle, right? Instead of just a double jab, you're doing a body blow first, right? Hitting it from different angles. So that's the plan here. And I think I'll just repeat a few of these until I can't do it anymore. I think that's a pretty decent mentality when it comes to quads. Because, I don't think they're going to get better stimulus if I do 2 of these and 2 of the hack and 2 of the pendulum and 2, whatever a good press is that day. I think just stick with it. And until you, basically exhaust your resources, just stay there, right? No need to complicate it. I want to change my workups lift by lift, but day by day, I've had chest days where all I did was a bunch of incline bench and then a set of flies to finish, and it was one of my fucking best lifts I can remember, So it's more so kind of overarching theme of intensity versus the nitpicky details of what's really going on. But I'm catching myself again talking instead of working. So, quit fucking distracting me.
If you've got something nagging at you, that is, and you're a race car, that nagging tweak somewhere, that's drag. That's an extra flap that's up when it should be smooth, so that air can kind of flow across you and you can have a good workout, right? So that is, that's something which I have had to gradually value more and more over the course of my training, especially as I've taken it more seriously now and I've actually really started putting huge size on, is there's a certain respect that the gym demands so you don't tweak yourself. Any injury of any variety, that's not 2 steps back, that's freaking 5 steps back. Absolute tomfoolery. There's no justification for it, right? Even if it's just a totally random thing and you did everything right and you warmed up and you have a random, probably something in your recovery was off, or you stayed up too late, you didn't have enough water. A lot of times it can be looped back, right? It's like if every time you ever have an injury in the gym, what is it, the NTSB? Yeah, I think it's whoever investigates airplane crashes, that's what you should be trying to emulate every time you tweak yourself in the gym. You should be able to look back and think, okay, what caused this? Right? Was I lifting too heavy? Did I not warm up enough? Did I not get enough sleep? Did I pick a machine I haven't done before and I wasn't really comfortable with it or ready for it? And if you can find the source and work on that and try to fix it, it's going to play into the future rather well. Every time I've tweaked something, I can explain it. I was doing weight that was too heavy. I was doing reps that were too quick and kind of bouncy. I was going too heavy when I was dieted. So obviously I need to chill out a little if I'm only eating, a few thousand calories a day at max. There's a lot of ways you can look at it. Whereas, most of the time, it's fucking bullshit, man. Yeah, my shoulder's wrecked, and then the guy keeps benching on it. Unfathomable. I just don't, because to actually look back and think, okay, what did I do wrong which caused this? That's a little bit of a sort of humility-based approach, and it's very easy to just blame something else. Oh, dude, that guy got in the fucking way. I wanted to do the 130s, but that guy was using them, so I went to the 140s when I wasn't ready for it. That fucking asshole. Or anything of the sort. It's very easy to deflect, right? But deflections aren't going to get you anywhere. If you do something wrong, the best thing you can do is just take it, learn from it, and improve onward. That's half of my gripe with a lot of just sleaziness that I see with anything. But when it comes to the training, right, dude, I've got the training style for you, man. only $400 a month, and you're gonna get jacked. It's like, really? Yeah, come on. And even the approach of it, I feel, is a little bit, I mean, it's so classic, right? You have someone teach you how to do something. Right? We go to school, we have a teacher, right? You go to a job, you have the guy who's doing your training so that you can learn the right way to do it. But with the working out, it's so personal, and not just personal mentally, but even on a physical level too, because nobody else has your exact body, that the guys who really make it far, and I don't mean far, I just mean like who are good at working out. I'm not talking bodybuilder, I'm talking just the guy at your YMCA who's jacked. I'm not saying 200 pounds jacked, even 170 lean. Like, I feel like I have to say this a lot. Being big does not always mean being physically large and big. I mean just muscularly developed, right? If I looked at a dude who was 160 diced, or 170 diced, that is sweet, right? When I look at old pictures of myself back when I was in the 180s, you know, pretty lean, I could only do 2 something for 10 on bench, that was still sweet, right? It's not as though I was smaller and I look back and I'm like, man, I looked like shit back then. No, it's just being a certain level of physically developed. That's the flex of being big. That's what I'm talking about, right? There's no, you're not better because you're 200 lean and this guy's 170. If this guy's 250 lean and you're 170, dude, he's got his own set of problems. It's always a give and take, right? So don't think this is a total freaking size off. You know what I'm saying? But if you want to get to that point where people know you work out and it looks like you do, then you can't follow a cookbook, man. You can't be a fucking cookie cutter about it. You know, it's your training, it's your body, it should be your approach. And the problem with that is it's not a fun answer. You know, if I went up to, you know, whoever, let's say if I was like, you know, my 16-year-old self, and I'm at the Arnold and I saw Chris Bumstead, or I saw Calvin Von Moger, or I saw Jay Cutler, or anybody, and you know, I don't know anything about training, right? This is the hypothetical, and I'm like, well, what's the best way to build my chest? I'm kind of expecting to hear like a secret bit of intel no one else knows, where, you know, he's going to tell me, he's like, look, all right, here's what you do, and then that's like this untold secret worth millions. And they know that too, you know. There is no answer like that. It's something to sort of be discovered for yourself, but that's not cool, right? What's the secret? There is no secret. That's not a cool answer, you know. But it doesn't take away, or I hope that doesn't take away from its value, you know. So, I mean, what can I tell somebody who wants to get bigger biceps? Start doing a bunch of curls, man, right? If I could give anybody a blueprint to follow, where they said, Sam, I want to be in good shape, I want to get in the gym, I want to be that guy, big, small, lean, whatever kind of end shape he wants to get to, I want to be that. Be it powerlifting, bodybuilding, strongman, anything, it doesn't matter. Then I would say, okay, you know, just follow some videos, like watch some guys who work out. Much better, I would say, if you know someone who works out, ask them to kind of tag you along, or maybe don't even ask them, but kind of like hint that you're getting interested into working out. Or if you know someone and you're the guy who's working out, you know somebody, one of your buddies, your younger brother, anything, and they're, you know, you can tell that they might be into it, but they don't want to come out and ask you, because then they're really asking you for like a favor sort of thing. That's a perfect ass situation to say, hey man, you wanna come and chest with me? That sentence right there could be an absolute game changer, life altering thing to say to somebody, right? And it seems so trivial, you know. So even just doing that, and then, you know, just getting your way through it. I mean, we're all there watching all sorts of older, like Athlete X, what are the best tricep movements. I think that was back when workout tutorials were a little more basic. There wasn't like an agenda, it's just, here are the movements. And then the guy did it. He's like, this is a straight bar push down, this is a rope extension, this is a dumbbell curl, this is a preacher curl, this is a cable fly, right? And he would just explain pretty much how to do it, and that was the end of it. You know, so get a good grasp of the vocabulary of all the movements there are: leg extension, leg curl, squat, leg press, hack squat, Smith machine. You know, just get a grip, show up to the gym, try it out, and just keep doing it for years. And before you know it, you'll be that guy, right? It's definitely a situation where, of course, you want to bring it, but no lift ever made a lifter. No individual workout or even week of workouts ever made or broke somebody's physique. You know, it's just a timed game, man. You know, so it's about clocking hours. So the more you do it, and the more you're like actually attentive with what you're doing, because you know, you could show up to a class every day of the year, but if you weren't focused and trying to learn, then you wouldn't learn jack. You know, so the more often you can show up, have a good workout that you're planning to do, visualize it, like, okay, I want to do dumbbell curls, preacher curls, bicep curls, cable curls, tricep pushdowns, dip machine, whatever that workout is. And frankly, it doesn't really matter what it is, as long as you try all sorts of different stuff and find out what you like. Even better, find out what works, then you're good, right? So I'm always looking for new intel, right? I'm always scanning around for new movements, different approaches, things like that. But I think I have a reasonable filter for it's a BSF, right? A BS filter. I think you know what those two letters stand for. Where sometimes you see a new movement like a preacher or a dumbbell or some kind of fly or like a superset or something, and you're like, oh, that's actually kind of interesting, right? And if it passes the filter, you say, I want to try that. You should catch a lot of stuff that you say, okay, this is stupid, right? I mean, there's a lot of movements that are very cool for show that'll get posted, and that's where you have to say, I'm not going to do that, but I will do this. I'm not going to do all this, but I will do this one thing. And the more you can add those new little bits of intel to your routine, the better. And you don't even have to scroll your phone for it. If your gym is busy enough, and there's guys in there who really lift, they're itching to talk about the gym, you know. Excuse me. You know, because if you work out, I mean, unless your whole family is like yoked and that's your thing, odds are you get your fix of kind of gym conversation maybe in the gym if you know somebody who is in there, and then the rest of the day, nothing. You know, not everybody works out. It's still kind of as mainstream as it's becoming, it's still kind of a niche sort of thing, you know. So if you go up to somebody who's pretty big, I mean, apart from the fact that right, everybody will probably just want to help you out if you're asking for real advice. People love telling other people how to do things, you know, and they've got your best interest at heart, right? It's like, okay, let me really tell you how to do a rope extension or how I like to do it, dude. The information's there. The information is not the problem. It's simply gathering it and applying it on your own, right? So when I see guys where they're constantly changing their workout splits, they're constantly doing new movements, or like they go back and forth between saying, oh, I should do high volume, oh no, this week I'm doing high intensity. Your training's a little too wishy-washy, right? It's never going to work, you know. Let's say you're trying to make a painting, even a beginner one, right? I get curious about that. I think it'd be fun to be able to put up like big pieces all over the walls somewhere at the house, or like things like that. So I get curious. But if I was going to do that, I would pick a reference picture and I would say, okay, I'm going to try to do this in this style and see what happens. And it's going to take a while. Right? I wouldn't be able to do that in one freaking minute, you know? So if every time I tried to do it, and, you know, let's say I set up a whole easel like that, or if someone did that, and every time you keep changing the reference picture, you're just going to have a pile of freaking smears all over the page, and it'll resemble nothing, you know? So this is, it's kind of a saddening fact, but it's kind of just the sort of the law of nature embodied in sort of human form here. But a lot of people that come to the gym and work out, they're doing just enough to get by, you know, but with just a little more kind of condensed effort, a little more specific, you know, intentional approaches, they could be making progress. And I can guarantee no one would deny themselves more progress if they saw it written out clear as day. The problem is it's something you got to freaking sort of find out for you, you know. If everybody, and this is what really gets me, guys will come to the gym, it's 5 days a week, 6 days a week, very consistent lifter. He's got his pre-workout, he's got his gym clothes, he's got a full-on duffel, he's got a fancy belt. Maybe he's into it enough where he got his belt embroidered, and he's got shaker bottle, he's got the whole shebang. This guy works out and he likes it. But if every lift you don't push yourself to that certain just degree of kind of, I don't even want to just say intensity, but just efficiency, efficacy, whatever, then you can do that whole process. You can do 90% of it right and still stay exactly where you are. You know, maybe he's not actually counting his calories enough. He's not eating enough food to recover well. Maybe he's not sleeping well. Maybe a million things. But that's where I want to say, if you can find out what's kind of hindering you, what's holding you back from progress, and work on that, that's almost, I'd say, more important than try to up any other factor, you know? Because as long as you're moving forward, you're good. If your trajectory is positive, if your candles are green, nobody can argue with your progress, right? So what I sort of want to highlight is trying to negate, like I said on the way here, anything that's going to act as drag, anything that's taken away from you maintaining this positive momentum. That's what you need to work on, right? When you're designing a freaking airplane or a submarine or just whatever, I mean, I would imagine, obviously they don't want this thing to be, they want this thing to be aerodynamic, right? You want to move fast and smooth. So if you're constantly needing to take breaks from working out, or you're just getting thrown off because of your routine, or, you know, just any number of things, those are the things you probably want to work on, right? One day of killing it is absolutely freaking undone by, you know, a week of coasting and just chilling, right? One day of grinding is countered by 2 days of coasting, or even a day of coasting, you know, who's to say exactly, right? So that's, I guess that's what I'm trying to get at there. So if your knee is a little iffy, don't go for a 1 rep max or a crazy set of something or other. And definitely don't do it while asking someone else to spot you and put that guy in danger. You know, I knew this one guy, or he told me this story where, this was like kind of like a high school kid, or I don't want to say kid, but, you know, high school guy. And he loaded up like 4 plates on squat and instantly dumped it backwards onto my buddy for, you know, to spot him. And like, he was just lucky the safeties were high enough that it didn't like totally crush his legs or like get his arms or anything. And then the you know, the guy who dropped the weight instantly, like he had absolutely no business even trying to unrack it. He looked back and was like, oh fuck, man, I didn't have it today, you know. Whoops. As if he didn't just almost break both of this guy's knees, shins, and femurs in half. Absolutely nuts. So use your best discretion.
That's a decent amount of fucking detail. I mean, no nothing, just sitting like freaking normal. I mean, I'm almost seeing like, yeesh. Well, that's cool. And that's the fun part. I tell you something, I do not look back at my 160-pound self or 170-pound self or any weight lighter than I am right now and think, oh man, I was so fucking small back then, bro. No, right? That's not a good thought process to have. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, right? I mean, we've all been there. It must have been after I was like kind of sick for a while or something had kept me out of the gym, and I could tell I was still eating like I was bulking, but the lifts weren't going as well. Like, this is early. This is years before even posting anything. But I was like, oh shit. So, I mean, I've been there. I put a blanket up over the mirror I had in my basement gym so I could wait till I was getting a little back in shape, so I didn't get kind of discouraged, because I was getting a little softer than what I was comfortable with. That was actually right when I kind of started working out. But yeah, man, it's just part of the process. And I have to clarify this so often, right? Because I'm always talking, it's like, dude, being big is a flex, being big is cool. I'm not talking monstrous. I'm not talking 260. I'm saying just reasonably, actually not even reasonably, I'm talking about being jacked. But you don't have to be a goddamn 280-pound mass monster to be jacked. If you're a 180-pounder and you've got a glimpse of ab veins and like your forearms are going crazy when you're doing curls, that is cool, right? There is no size hierarchy. It's just a personal fucking preference, you know? That's like saying, yeah, you know, I'm more of a Georgia peach ice cream kind of guy. You like vanilla? Like, you want to be a lighter weight and be lean? You don't want to be huge? Stupid. Absolutely foolish, right? Plus, I mean, you can get big enough where you lose the look, you lose your waist, you lose the ratio, And then it's like, all right, man, shit. Your pursuit of size just killed the coolness of your build. And of course, even that statement is going to be opinionated, right? So don't freak. You know, lift your weights, make progress, and be happy about it. That's my take. But we've all got all sorts of shit, right? So the logic of this idea was, he was saying, don't let yourself get overwhelmed by, you know, whatever multitude of things you got going on. Try to boil it down to just a main 3 to 5 sort of points on like a week basis. Like, these 3 things need to get done no matter what. Everything else can kind of be on the back burner, right? Of course, you shouldn't drop everything and just, you know, work on like getting your cardio in. You've still got a whole life to live. But the idea is, like, if there's things that you know have to be added to your to-do list or whatever, treat them as though they're crucial and make sure that they get done. And then the more you can do that, the same thing with working out, it becomes easier to do, right? You'll become more proficient at it. So the way I look at that is like, okay, sure, you want to be lean, you want to be back in your college build, or at least as close as you can get to it. You want to bench 315 one day, you want to do whatever. That's huge. There are a million steps between where you're at now versus like a certain goal that is going to take years to get to. So how I, you know, look at a situation like that is, okay, well, obviously it's going to be a while. I kind of want to be a little more concerned with the short term, right? What do I, because instead of, okay, what do I have to do for this entire time period to work up to this massive thing I'm trying to, it's much easier to say, okay, what do I have to do today? What are 2 things that I have to do today that will keep me on track, right? Because rather than like, oh my gosh, like, I mean, it's a hard sell. Imagine telling someone who's never worked out before, but has the itch, and tell them, okay, you want to look like this dude? And I'm not saying like he's looking at Chris Bumstead and saying like, oh, you want to look like, or like Ronnie Coleman or anything. I'm saying just like a pretty jacked dude, right? Which I think is basically feasible for anybody. I think long enough, 190 lean, even upper of like 200 decently lean. Like, I'm not talking ab veins, but I'm talking like 12-ish% body fat. I don't think that's unfeasible. It might depend on your height, of course, but that's I'm saying that's something that can be done. Now imagine telling this guy, all right, that's what you want to be, or you want to reach that level. Okay, you know, just do this, this, and this, work out, eat this certain way, eat more, track everything, and, you know, just do that for 4 or 5 years, and then you'll be there. 4 to 5 years, not awesome, right? So what I'm looking at is it's not as though you get that end result instantly, like, okay, this is my 5th year anniversary of working out. I'm gonna make all my gains cumulatively at once. Oh, this is awesome. No, it's not a moment by moment thing. There is no day where your physique will change so drastically that you get to think, holy crap, it all paid off because this one day things completely changed. It's gradual, right? So if it's gradual, then get into the habit and into just the understanding that continuous, gradual gains are what you're working for. So as long as you're in a state of progress, as long as your trajectory is in the green, you're good, right? So whether you're losing a pound a week, you're gaining half a pound a week, or your bench is going up 10 pounds every month, or just whatever, if you're making noticeable progress that you're at least satisfied with, and you know, like, you're really bringing it, then you're good. Just at that point, you just get to enjoy the process. There is a kind of I want to say a certain level of tenure that you get from working out, from beginner stage to, like, I don't want to say amateur, but like experienced stage, where you basically have your shit in order, you know what to eat, you know how to lift, you're getting good workouts, you're working out consistently, you are that guy who comes to the gym, you're really killing it, you know, dudes are asking you for spots. Then you kind of just get to enjoy, because you'll reach a point where working out is very normal. This is your new regular routine. It does not feel like you're killing yourself to make sure you keep coming to the gym every day, and you're still making progress, right? So it's if that's your new normal, gains are just occurring,
right? So you just get to kind of enjoy. So all that's to say is don't get dissuaded or thrown off by the fact that it's going to take a while, because that's what makes it more valuable, because not a lot of people are willing to do something that's kind of uncomfortable and hard for a pretty decent chunk of time. And I'm not talking like work, like you're on the clock, you're getting paid. Like you're working out because this is your free time and it's something you want to do. You know, the reward is, it takes a minute to kind of get, in a sense, but eventually you'll start to realize that it's not just about, you know, how big you are, what you look like or anything. It kind of extends beyond that into a little more of just kind of a contentness with, you know, doing something that's a little bit uncomfortable and still enjoying it, you know. So I think that's sort of my shtick for today. I'm usually one to say you can kind of train your way up to like pretty consistent and intense muscular training, right? I mean, you could, if you did like, if your thing was 300 push-ups a day and you just did that every day, eventually you'd get to the point where that's not like totally wrecking you. You know, you'll be able to adapt to it. But there isn't such a quick adaptation to, you know, your tendons and your ligaments and your joints. It still happens, but I think that's a little slower, you know. And as they're slower to, you know, kind of adapt, they're also slower to recover. So if you really wreck your patella or, you know, any other kind of binding sort of thing, I didn't take like physiology, so I don't know everything. But yeah, if you rip your labrum, dude, not good, right? So if you know you're a little tender around the edges of your shoulders or your knees or your hips, maybe don't go totally wild that day, right? And if anything, that's just going to play into having better versatility or variety to your training, because now instead of coming in every day like heavy, come in light, squeezing, burning, maybe even a little bit more volume, and just, you know, totally pump your quads up, right? As holy, yeah, this is, I was about to quote him as if I listened to it in like some video I watched, but that was probably the coolest thing I got to hear Arnold say. Was he was like, you know, you can make the sets hard from the reps, you can make it hard from the weights, you know, change up. There's no one specific answer. I would never want to only do one style of set indefinitely, right? Like, be it like failure to 10 heavy, or, you know, like failure-ish to like 20 and have it be lighter, squeezing, burning. Like, no, man, I want to hit it from all angles. And then that's kind of my best bet in ensuring that the training I'm doing is at least stimulating something, you know. Because the basic understanding of, like, you know, muscle building, you know, getting in shape, whatever, I mean, the human body and really any organic life, it's pretty versatile. You know, you can hit yourself around pretty hard and you'll still be all right. You know, it's actually kind of hard to overdo it. As much as we talk about, oh, you're overtraining, like, no. Overtraining is when you're like a David Goggins doing that 100-mile around the track and then he's pissing blood because he sent himself into severe rhabdo. That's overdoing it, right? But if you're eating a good amount of food and you're getting a good amount of rest, dude, you can go, I mean, for the most part, at least as far as I'm concerned, as hard as you can. The limit's almost unfeasible in a lift. Like, I'm not saying come in and do chest for like 6 hours straight, obviously, but I'm definitely not saying that if you do like a 20 rep or like a 8 or 10 set chest day and you really bring it, that you're not gonna be able to come back stronger the next time. That's kind of the whole point, right? You go as hard as you can, recover, and then now you're capable of going one step harder, right? That's kind of the whole point. Sort of destruction and reconstruction in perpetuity, ideally upward. So after a while, you'll be a different dude, right? And not only different because you'll be bigger, but you'll just be different as a guy because you were able to stick with something for so long, right? I mean, this is something I've sort of experienced a few times. It kind of sucks because sometimes, you know, I went to gyms when I was like 16 or 17 on like a family trip, just kind of around the States, and I really liked them. So a few of them closed down during COVID, so I didn't get to go back, which I really wish I could have. There's this one Powerhouse gym in oh man, what's that one like island off of North Carolina? Just having a yawn. But either way, you know what I'm talking about if you live there. But there is this badass powerhouse in I don't know the name. But either way, it was awesome. New machines, everything was just nice and cool. I felt really bad for a minute because there's this bigger dude in there, and he had like an energy drink sitting in the back of his bench, and I'm walking an easy bar and I accidentally knock it over, and I was like, oh no. But I wish I could have gone back there. But all I'm trying to get at is no lifter comes back to the same gym twice. Because he's not the same lifter, nor. There we go. All right, I've got a little bit of a message for you. All right, unrelated to 4th of July, but in terms of, why do you do anything? All right, why does anybody do anything? Why is somebody gonna help someone else pick up their bags when they dropped all their binders on the first day of school, like 90s high school movie style? Why do people hold the door open? Why do some guys take the stairs instead of the elevator? And it's not just random mumbo jumbo, ones and zeros. There's definitely a difference between one of the like automatic DoorDash robots zipping around a city like doing a delivery, right, versus the shit me and you get to do every day, right? And the difference is that you get to enjoy it, and ideally you're doing things you're going to enjoy, right? So it's at least for me, I feel like it's comes down to not an argument, but just a kind of a deeper look at your value systems, right? Somebody who values going hard, working out, is going to work out. Somebody who values being able to at least have a grip on their body composition, right? Either are they gaining fat and just getting larger, or are they losing body fat and getting leaner, or are you just staying the same level, whatever, right? So I probably question you to look at your own value systems there, and it's like, okay, do you really value chilling on the couch more than you would value the feeling of finishing a badass leg day? Probably not, right? Probably not. So that's my shtick, right? If you should be doing something, the uncomfortability or like the hassle of doing it in the moment, you're totally going to forget that, right? That's completely gone. Remember that time you were waiting in line for 3 hours for that one thing? No. The only thing that sucks is with the 96%, they don't make like a big 4-pound pack. They only come in 1-pound increments. But things like this, since it's just going to be plain anyway, like I'm not the kind of guy to make muscle burgers or little individual patties or anything. This is just going to be 5 pounds all at once into a stove pot, stirred, cooked on low until it's all totally cooked through, and then I can strain that, and I can have 5. I think 6 pounds is the most I've ever done at once. 6 is a little crazy, but by having it fully just cooked and prepped, sitting in the fridge, it's ready. As much as I'm not walking around with Tupperware meals, I do always try to make sure I have at least the basic components of what my meals are going to be for the day totally prepped, or at least one step away. The instant oatmeal, that's just pouring some boiling water out of the kettle, done. Ground beef, cooked, left in the fridge, all you got to do is scoop it out, right? Things like that. So the less friction that you can have from the thought, I need to get a meal in, to the action of eating a meal, the better. Because the longer something would take, the more it's going to be a chore, and then subconsciously you're not even going to do it. And before you know it, you said you were bulking. It's been 3 months, you weigh the exact same. I'm not going to say you made no progress, because lifting consistently, that's something, right? I'm not saying that's nothing. But if you could have made more gains and you didn't, that kind of makes me think,
if that time wasn't wasted, what was it? You know, so that's where I would most certainly look back at, you know, any off season. And if I made like negligible size difference from beginning to end, if I started the bulk at 230 and ended it 6 months later at 235, not substantially bigger, just with like some more body fat, it's like, what did I do? You know what I'm saying? So these are the things that they're not as flashy, right? A set of 3-plate bench is way cooler than coming to the grocery store, putting together a bunch of ground beef and, you know, whatever, and prepping and everything else like that. But this is the kind of behind the scenes. You know, this is the guy who is sitting at his desk all day looking up different rubber polymers because of their frictional strength or whatever. And down the road, that results in like a freaking F1 car getting an extra 3 seconds on whatever kind of track, you know? So it's like, it might seem like a small thing now, but it will scale to become larger. If I just came from a dieting phase and I've been eating, you know, 2,000, 2,500 calories on average, you know, what does that mean? That means that 2,000 calories is my regular intake, right? That's as much gas as I need to fill my tank for, you know, a week, 2 weeks, whatever. Just as like an analogy. So if I want to start gaining weight, I just have to eat a little more. You know, I don't have to jump from 2,000 to 4,000. It just doesn't make any sense. You'd kind of start spilling over, as it were, and not in a good way. I'm not talking like, oh, I'm getting so full. No, you know, if I went from instant 5,000 from 2,000, I would see a substantial weight gain, like pretty quick, but it wouldn't be good weight, you know, because that's far too much of a deficit than what's actually even necessary, you know, because if I go from, I mean, just imagine it, right? Imagine 2,000 extra calories, totally unnecessary, apart from, you know, maybe the 3,000 I might really utilize for workout recovery, hypertrophy, everything else. It's like there's a sweet spot of a calorie surplus, right? This is maintenance. This is a little higher, right? And this is kind of the green zone where you eat enough, you're growing, you're recovering, you're getting bigger and stronger, but you're not getting too soft, you know? So the bigger that this surplus becomes, you'll reach a point where it's unnecessarily big. And instead of actually just, you know, putting on more size, you start just putting on more fat, you know? And I've seen it a few too many times, but it's just taken a bulk to an unnecessary level. You know, I mean, I can kind of see the appeal if you're like more of a power lifter character, you're aiming for like just pure strength performance output. Body fat would be no concern. Let's say you're like you're a guy who could not give 2 shits about his weight class. But if you're a little more just regular lifter oriented, you know, you're concerned with staying at like a reasonable body fat, then you know, you kind of want to stay in the green where you're eating enough, but you're not eating so much that you're just packing on fat for no reason. But usually that's not even a problem. You know, I think most guys struggle with even getting enough food in to grow in the first place. So, you know, I'd say 90% of the time, keep eating. And then for the 10% of the guys who are doing a little too much, maybe your ratio of meals to treats is a little off, then you got to chill out, right? But at least make sure that the scale is changing in the direction that you want to go. But for me, now that I want the scale to, you know, keep increasing, I've kind of approached a little more of a chill kind of, well, not diet in general. Like I'm still kind of eating very similar to what I have been before, but in just a simpler manner, you know, because if I sit here just grinding a bunch of just like kind of junkish, more sugary processed kind of foods, things with, I mean, it's almost like you're following a rule. The less ingredients in a meal, the better. Because I mean, it's not like it hasn't worked, right? I'm still walking around like 265, 270, but with that much food, I mean, just you're kind of forced to cut down to the bare essentials. So it's just easier to keep eating. What I need to do here, and what I'm trying to work on with my pull downs, is I have a tendency to lean back and to almost convert it into a little bit of a row. Now, I'm not saying I'm going so crazy that I'm like leaning back, turning it into a straight bar row, But what happens is every time I kind of crank it and arch in the pull down, which usually I would think is me tightening up everything in my lats. I mean, it kind of feels like that. All I really end up doing is just hitting my erectors, right? Everything down here in my lumbar, which kind of regulates this sort of action. And I don't want to build these. They're big enough. Like when I do a back sort of flex like this, I can see my Christmas tree. They're there enough. I don't need to thicken that up. At least in a bodybuilding kind of aesthetic look, I'm not a power lifter, it doesn't add anything, you know? I mean, you need them to be developed enough that you see them, but if you overdo it, it's gonna thicken up your lower back so much, it takes away from your lats, you know? The lats are the superstars of the back, right? And then the lead guitarist, that's the traps. And then you got the drummer, that's the rhomboids, that's this fancy stuff. And I mean, it's almost like the freaking, well, let's not say the groupies, but you know, the crew running everything, that's the lower back. It supports the whole thing, but it's not the star of the show, you know? So when I think of, because the strength doesn't always correlate to size, and deadlifts are weird because now it's more of like a skill thing because they're in sumo, whatever. But I'm more concerned with like crazier lats. You know, if I could pick one muscle to double in size on my back, and you told me, look, man, you can have lats that are double the width, or you can have erectors that are double the thickness. Come on, easy choice, at least for those educated in musculature. 5 big ones will do the trick. Now you will, if you're at a gym where people throw some weight around at, then I'm sure you've seen this exact setup, but guys really love throwing the 2.5 pound plates on the sides just for the kick of it, all right? To say they're a 500 pound squatter. Not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I don't know, man. I've never been a micro loading fan. When my squat blows up the most in an off season, which it looks like it's scheduled to for this one. I mean, I'll gradually increase the weight. My rule, I guess you could say the Sulek strength building rule, 8 reps minimum, but bring it, right? So what I'm saying is if I got 8 with this much weight today, I'm fresh, I'm strong, I'm ready. If I only got 8, then I'm not gonna go heavier than this next week or next leg day, right? Assuming I still feel good. Now, if I get like 10, you know, maybe I'll do the same weight. Maybe I'll up it by, 20 pounds, so 10 on each side. But if I did like 11 reps today or 12, that's my cue. I got it. Throw a 10 the next time. Maybe throw a 15 on the side the next time, you know. A 50-pound jump in a week or in a few days, it's a bit much. But my logic is, at least how it's worked so far, is if you can do 8, do it again so you can do like 11 or 12, and then up the weight. If it's like one of your crazy or heavy sets, I would be, not only would I be freaked out, I just wouldn't do a weight if I only thought I could get 4 reps or 5 reps. That's, in a bodybuilding sense, because I'm not used to that kind of training, I'd call that the danger zone. Now, if you train like that all the time, doing, 3x3s or whatever, then you're good. Obviously, you're used to that. I'm not used to those lower reps, right? So I want to go as heavy as I can with volume, right? I'm talking speed and weight. Usually you've got a choice between the two. I'm talking putting a V12 in a Miata here. But yeah, man, I mean, nothing crazy flashy, It's more so a concern of like just making sure you at least get close to a certain caloric value, obviously macros included, to whatever is necessary for your current goals. So I'm talking, and this could be a whole kind of like lecture style video in and of itself, but just to put it simply, like, go on Google, look up maintenance calorie calculator. It'll ask you to, the first website, doesn't matter. It'll ask you to plug in your height, weight, body fat, how much you work out, everything else about you, and it'll pump out a number, and the number will be like close-ish. If I write down, okay, I'm 5'11", I'm 23, I'm a guy, I weigh 260, I'm like 12% body fat, I work out every day, it's going to give me a number, like a macro sort of estimate of what I should be eating to maintain my weight, lose body fat, or gain weight, right? Now, I'm definitely going to kind of adjust it, because usually all these websites will estimate a lower protein intake than you probably want. So my rule of thumb, as like if you've never gone into macro tracking before, look up that value, right? Any website, it doesn't really matter. Find whatever macronutrients they kind of pump out. Let's say it reads, you know, you're a 200-pound dude, you are 20% body fat, you're 20, you're a guy, you're 5'8", or you're 5'10", whatever. Then I would probably at least adjust it so the protein value is your current lean weight. So I usually just say 250. I don't mind going over a little bit. But if the website said I should be eating 150 grams of protein, I'm going to change it, right? 250, so a gram per however many pounds I weigh, relatively lean. If a 400-pound dude has like 100 pounds of fat on him, he doesn't need 400 pounds of protein. And then usually my rule after that would be cut the fats in half. So in an off season, I'm doing 250 grams of protein, 120 grams of fat is usually my max intake. And then eat as many carbs as it says, you know, but that's just an estimate. That's just, you know, that computer doesn't know you. It doesn't know how much you're fidgeting. It doesn't know how many steps you're getting per day. So that's an estimate to start off of, right? But that's phase one. And then if you really want to get a little more in tuned with your weight gain up or down, then you got to do phase two. Weigh yourself every morning after the bathroom, clothesless, right? I'm talking buck naked, so you can actually get a real value of your morning weight. And that's the most consistent time to weigh yourself. You know, if you weigh yourself midday, what if you drank 2 liters of water already? I mean, what are we talking about? It's like an extra 5 pounds, you know? So by weighing yourself every morning like that and tracking your calories, everything else, making sure you're on track, then that should show you, okay, am I getting leaner? Am I staying the same weight? Am I bulking up? So depending on which one you're trying to do, the scale, you know, after a few weeks will reveal if what you're doing is working, you know? So if I think I'm eating at a calorie deficit, you know, I'm telling myself, oh man, I'm grinding, I'm starving myself. But after a month, my weight stayed exactly the same. Clearly I'm not doing enough. Either not enough cardio or not enough, you know, calorie restriction. So that's where you've got to look at it just objectively. Don't get your feelings hurt. No matter how hard it feels like you're dieting, if that scale isn't changing and you're, you know, maintaining the same body composition, that's your cue. You got to change something. Add more cardio, add less calories. You know, there's a few different ways to get around it. But as long as the scale's output is representative of what you're trying to do, then you're golden. You know, if you're let's say you're like, I want to stay the same weight, I just want to keep getting stronger. You're staying the same weight, maybe your gym numbers are going up every week, you're golden. You know, but the scale absolutely reveals all, and it kind of has to be, you know, respecting that sense. You know, that's kind of why there's such a hate for the bathroom scale, at least on like a non-lifter kind of level, because, you know, that means people have to look at the scale and say, oh crap, I'm 30 pounds heavier than I was 3 months ago or a year ago. And that's not a fun feeling. You know, I would, I'm not speaking from experience, but I would certainly imagine, you know, if you're going from like a lean dude and then 5 years passes, you're 60 pounds overweight, you're like, what the hell happened? You know, so that's a situation where, shit, that's just how it is. You got to take accountability for it. If you start using a grocery cart that looks a little more like this and, you know, doesn't have so many, you know, random ass treats like are in the aisle that I'm in now, that'll help. You know, just got to put it out there, put it a little more bluntly. The more you're sweating and the more you're tracking, I'd say you're upping your odds of goal achievement 2-3 times easy.